problem. Thank you for joining us. And hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today for our second open house session of the week. With us today, we have Lesley Baker, who's the Graduate Program Director for the MFA Ceramics Program. And Lesley will be going over the program and answering your questions. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm also the department head of of ceramics. We're one of the smaller departments, so we have a couple where we have a dual degree or dual responsibilities. But anyway, so I can answer more questions beyond just the graduate program. So I'm assuming everybody's done their research and know that we're a 2-year program, and we're kind of culminating in a thesis exhibition as well as a required written thesis. We It's hard to just do a spiel. Sometimes it's better to come from questions. But one thing with our department, actually, I can answer size. We have currently have 8 graduate students in the program, so that's 4 first years and 4 second years. Sometimes that ranges a little bit. The max I think we've had is 10. But right now, with our current configuration, we can handle 4. We have 4 graduating and we have 4 studios that will be opening up. So that's kind of our goal for this upcoming year. Um, and then our students are also housed within the same area as the undergraduate students. So we are in the Metcalf building, and we're one of the few areas where our graduate students are actually within the facilities that they're using mainly. So because our kilns and glaze room and everything are in that location. And that also has a lot of overlap with our undergraduates. So some courses are actually taken together, our materials class, a history class, sometimes our senior and graduate critique class or joint classes. And then the graduate students also have a lot of opportunities within the department. So which to me is a kind of a strength that it expands beyond like what the classes they're taking. So almost all of our graduate students opt to be teaching assistants, and that is an opportunity we do offer every graduate student. I know some of their programs, that's a competitive process, and I'm talking outside of RISD. Some other schools, it's a competitive process. But what we like to do is try to pair up, accommodate a student in an area that either they want to learn more or it's experience where they have, and they would just like to expand it or work alongside an instructor and kind of learn, that process and learn how they teach. And we try to rotate everybody so you're kind of working with different professors, and not always stuck with the same person, so that you're just always seeing a lot of different teaching styles, and just seeing a lot of demonstrations and encountering a lot of different processes. We also have a pretty active visiting artist program. We just hosted Eva Kwong this whole past week, and she came and did studio visits with the graduate students. And then she actually asked to stay for a few days and work with our 3D ceramic printers. And since she doesn't have access to that, so we kind of have a range of maybe somebody comes in and they just do a talk and studio visits. Maybe they do a demonstration. It could be a range. Sometimes we bring in curators. So this semester we've had Glenn Adamson came in and did visits right at the beginning of the semester. Virgil Ortiz was also a joint visitor with Brown. And then we had Forrest Les Middleton, who does image transfer onto ceramics and runs a production business in Petaluma, California. In the spring, we will have Roberto Lugo come work in the studio for a few days. Jen Allen's going to come work in the studio for a few days. And potentially, we don't know the answer on this one yet, but we might be bringing in some Korean art visitors, but we haven't gotten finalized word on that. So that's kind of just a rough, like, we usually try to bring about, at least 2, but usually 3 visitors to the studio. And also we invite in external. We have Michelle Fisher from the Boston MFA is going to be joining our final reviews this semester. She's one of the curators of the decorative arts at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. So we always bring in external people to join with the reviews at the end of each semester. All right, questions, because it's kind of hard to, like, there's classes, there's different
Yeah.
opportunities. It's like I'm not sure what people are interested in learning more about.
So I got some questions queued up too while
Okay.
we wait for some more to get into the Q&A as well. What's like you've touched upon this, but what is the general structure of the 2 years? And what can a student expect like their day to day? We know it's a full-time program, but what does that actually mean when it translates to hours in the studio or the classroom?
That's a good question. So the RISD has a unique schedule in terms of most classes meet once a day or once a week. Sorry, once a day, once a week. But so typically a studio class is 5 hours, one day a week. And I actually like that structure because you get to really focus on one class. And even as an instructor, like if I'm teaching mold making and slip casting, we can complete a mold in that class, where normally if it's a 2 day a week class, it's hard to finish anything. Um, so, and then some of the classes within the graduate program could be a 6 credit or a 9 credit class. So, things to be aware of is that you may have, you may be taking 5 3 credit classes, or you may be taking, one 6 credit class and 3 other classes. Incoming semester is we have it set. It is all ceramics, and partially it's because an incoming student has a very hard time trying to register for an elective because they've all been registered for already in the spring semester. Everybody's already registered for fall. So the incoming grads take a ceramic history class, they take our ceramics material science class, and then the graduate critique class. I think that's the right order. And then everybody's usually a teaching assistant. Then we also have winter session. Both years, winter session's completely open, an elective course, and that's up to you what you want to take. And we highly recommend taking a studio course during that. And that's an opportunity to take a course outside of the department. And examples of recent classes students have taken has been jewelry, paper making, illustration, wood. What else? Working with recycled materials, glass. So there's a nice range, and it usually the students do find a course that sort of falls within their interests or lets them try something different, but then it comes back and informs their practice. And then from spring on that first year, you're taking, you have a set graduate critique class that you will have that all 4 semesters, regular semesters. And then it starts opening up to electives where you're looking for seminars, you're looking for studio courses. You can take some of those courses within the department. I teach the 3D printing digital ceramics, and 3 of our 4 grads are in that course, and one of them is taking a ceramics and print course with Shoji Satake. So they are opting to take one course, elective course in the spring within the department, just to kind of expand their ceramics. But it really opens up to where you can kind of find that direction of what are those seminars, what are those studios, and where do you want to gain more experience. Um, was that the question, Jen?
Yeah, that was great. You really
Okay.
elaborated on that. Thank you. Someone just asked in the chat what summers look like. Are there teaching opportunities?
That's a good question too. I've been talking about that. Summer for first year transitioning to second year, you do have access to the studios. At this point, we don't have teaching opportunities. We do have a pre-college course that runs, but they typically hire, that's run by our continuing education. So I have very little involvement in the pre-college course. And typically, they've got somebody that teaches it every summer, and then we have an undergrad that's a TA. It has been asked, could that be an opportunity for a graduate student? And we were just meeting with continuing ed last week, and I brought up that the graduates do ask for opportunities to teach, and CE actually seemed kind of open. So we were throwing out that idea of could they teach a workshop or something different. So continuing ed would be not for credit courses. So it kind of opens up like it could be anything type of thing. So I don't know, maybe, but at this point, I would say it's a just open studio. And we have some jobs within the studio, but we really don't have the teaching opportunities. I will say we're in an old building that is not air conditioned. So Providence can get a little humid in the summer. So it's not always the ideal space to be hosting something like that. Just depending on timing. June's lovely. So just depending on how things go and schedule. Um, so, but I'd say, usually not everybody opts to stay over the summer. I recommend staying over the summer and really taking advantage of the facilities. It's nice and quiet, and you have a lot of, I mean, in terms of there's just not much classes going on, so it's a really great time to work in the studio and to also take a little break. So we also had some grads go off and do a couple. We had a student go to Watershed and did a 2-week residency. We had a student do a workshop at Aeromont. So I would also say take that time to just go take a break and go explore something also. But yes, you have access to the studios.
Fantastic. And I just wanted to just add in a little note real quick. Do have to end the session at 11:55 so I can start the next session that's immediately following, but we still got plenty of time. Another question for you. How does the program support students who come in with diverse backgrounds, like sculpture, design, craft, or conceptual work?
Um, as long as you want to work based in ceramics, we are very supportive of that. Really, I mean, we've got how you approach the material. And even then, does it need to be a majority of it? But as long as you feel versed in ceramics as a place you should be homed, like that is your home base, then we're fully accepting of kind of any way you want to take the material. If it's installation, it's performance, we've had combination of film and ceramics. Um, yeah, it's as long as that's the right place for you. I will say that RISD is pretty department strong, and somewhat siloed. And so if if it's really more of a sculpture based practice, then you should be considering applying to sculpture. But if you really do want to be based out of the material, and when I say that, I mean really literally the material. I wouldn't care if you never fired anything. I mean, you would have to for the materials class. I mean, we do want to get you through the processes, but if you just want to, that it's all about the material or even the processes in some way, then we would support that. We're very open. We love pushing the concept, pushing, how you might work with it, um, how you might, push the idea of the material. I'm very excited about that.
Great. Let's see here. Oh, we got some questions. All right. This person would love to hear more about the travel residency opportunities mentioned on the grad program website. The opportunity to research ceramics really interests me.
Okay. So we have the University Global. So there are programs that are run through Global, but currently our new faculty member is, I say new, Shoji started last year, but Shoji Sataki had joined us and has already had 3 programs approved. And this winter session is taking a group to Japan and Taiwan.
Oh,
And we
cool.
have a graduate student, second year graduate student who's his teaching assistant. And at least sorry, I have a dog that might be making some sounds in just a second because she wants to go out. So if you hear a dog in the background, um, problems of doing Zoom at home. Um, and then I know we have at least one of the first year grads is on that program, and the plan now, this is the first year they're running it, it will run every other winter session. So it won't be next year, but the following year we will run this program again. And so they're leaving early January. They're going to go to Japan and tour Japan, and then finish it, and then go to Taiwan and actually have access to a studio, working with the university there. And then he also had just had it approved. So Jen, you probably don't even know about this one because it hasn't been announced fully, but he just had a summer China program approved that will be taking a group to Jingdezhen. And anybody who does ceramics should be familiar or does know Jingdezhen. And Shoji's been running a program there for many years when he was working with West Virginia University. This program will be culminating in a international ceramics conference that's being hosted in Jingdezhen. So it's a little unusual in that conference isn't going to be happening every summer. So there'll be a variation of that one. But this summer it will be going to China and then a few areas, touring a few different areas, but then culminating in this week-long conference, like participating in the International Ceramics Conference. Um, and then, that's within the department, that's what we have right now. And then I said the other thing was to look at other global courses, and typically those happen during winter session. And the summer, not quite so much as, winter session is required for graduate students, summer is not. So I hope that answered that question.
The person who asked it said that sounds amazing. And I can help answer this next question, the second part to that, and then we'll dive into this other question that came in that's really great. What's the housing situation like, and do you need a car in Providence? So most of our grad students do choose to live off campus. There's a very limited amount of on-campus housing for grad students. It's located in our 15 West building. If that's something you're interested in, once you're admitted, you'd want to reach out to get on the list with Residence Life pretty quickly for that on-campus housing. Um, but in regards to in regards to parking, there like isn't even enough parking for faculty and staff generally. So unfortunately, we're RISD is embedded within a city, so we are limited with the parking for everybody on campus, and there is not dedicated student parking. So it would be just street parking if you decided to have a car. But we do have an amazing public transit, the RIPTA, which RISD students get to ride for free. So if you live in the Providence metro area, there are many bus stops that you can take for that. And then there's also RISD Rides, which is an on-call car service dedicated for RISD students as well.
We
All
also
right.
have some recent grads who like using the electric scooters.
Oh, yeah. That I'm too scared. I've never been on one.
Anyway, this area also has the electric scooters. But
Yep.
yeah, it's a pretty walkable city. Yeah, so and then the bus system's pretty handy. So people, some just following up on that, students typically live fairly close, or yeah, take advantage of the bus system. That's you just get on a live on a line, and the bus hub is right downtown, so it's a decent bus system. I'm not going to say great, but decent.
For
Yeah.
sure. This is a good question. For those coming from a diverse art background, this person's very curious about working with things like image transfer
Hmm.
because they work with print media as well as 3D printing that you mentioned. In that vein, is it worth including examples of intaglio print work? Sorry
Italio.
if I'm pronouncing intaglio, sorry, print work. What kind of experience are you looking for that might be relevant to work with 3D printers without direct access to such tools?
Oh, I'm gonna say almost everybody comes in with no access to those tools. So, we've got, and usually the students when that take the class have never 3D printed. So I don't think if that's an interest you want to go, it's necessarily to see any examples that you might need to, know how to do that or want to go that direction. I find it, surprising who actually does want to take the class and who doesn't. And most of the students who do are because it is such a new process and a different way of working. I really encourage the students to take it, even if maybe they don't end up incorporating in their works. It really pushes them to think in a different way about the material, and clay. And it was really interesting having Eva Kwong, and we'll probably get some pictures on our Instagram, here for you guys that hopefully are familiar with her, but she's very well known for her hand-built work, and she was talking about why she wants to 3D print now. And it's just kind of that it's pushing her, it's kind of like that she wants to continually push herself, but seeing how she's translating the ideas of her other work into 3D printing. And then tying early, the other part of that question was image transfer. That's an area where we've expanded very recently within the department. And online article just went live about our new little dark room. But that's a course we've been teaching for a while called Ceramics and Print that first started. I taught it jointly with Andrew Raftery in printmaking. And there's a kind of a great relationship with printmaking. And now we're offering that course each semester. So that's one of the rare courses that we offer twice a year. And in the fall, it's a ceramics course, meaning we host it. And in the spring, printmaking actually hosts the course, but it's all taught within ceramics. So this past year, currently, sorry, right now, Dave Allen is teaching the course, and he will be teaching it again next year and probably the year after. And to facilitate us being able to do this in-house, he actually built a darkroom for us. So now we can coat and expose silk screens, and so when we had Forrest/Middleton come in as a visiting artist, he was actually able to expose a brand new screen, in our studio and walk the students through the full process. And so that now lives in our facilities that we've actually added this little screen exposure unit coding area, and a printer to make it very simple to make new screen prints. But to get on the more digital side, we also have a digital decal printer that we just started using last year. So it's I mean, we had an older one before that, but it wasn't working very well. So we have a brand new that will print 11 by 17 decals with ceramic toner. So we can kind of go the range of, mono printing to, the full-on digital decal. And so, yeah, anybody that's interested in any sort of surface transfer. And so one of our current first year grads did apply last year with, she actually has a process where, because she didn't have access to a decal printer, where she's actually just taking color photographs and doing that process where you put a medium on there and pull the image off of the paper, and then she just was gluing them to her pieces. And that was what we saw, in her application of like, oh my gosh, if she had access to a decal printer, like what would she do, or what would she do with the print? So she's gonna be in the ceramics and print this spring, with Shoji, because she's ready to dive into it and figure out how to actually do it all with ceramic media. But what we saw was how that could translate. So just in terms of applications, um, it is fine to include 2D work or other media if it relates to the ceramic work you're doing. So, where we may have somebody submit ceramic work in their paintings, but we can see how the two relate to each other, or we could see how the image or the surface of the painting could actually translate into ceramics, or they complement each other or something like that. So if it's you think it's not just a distraction from your portfolio, then include it. But if it's something that you're like, this is the type of imagery that I want to get onto my clay, and we can see how those two things could work, then include it, um, and talk about it, in your application.
That's great. Now that we're on the topic of the application and the portfolio, we can start diving into some of those questions because we do have a lot of those now. If you don't have a studio art undergraduate degree, what advice do you have on preparing a strong portfolio and application?
Um, it is fine not having a studio art background. Again, we're open to that. The portfolio is really about showing us that you do have enough of an understanding about ceramics in a consistent kind of direction in the work. So it's not about seeing, sorry, the dog, sorry, you get distracting. It's not about seeing like, oh, I know how to do everything. It's like, I don't, you don't need to show an example of here's a wheel thrown pot, a hand built pot, a coil, like it's more about a consistent body of work. And what we can see is, and it would also tie into your statement because you're writing a statement for the application, so that we would see how those two things work together. And, like that you can flesh out what the work's about within the statement. And, they can kind of work with each other, but just to that we see the potential of where your work could go, when you're here. So just knowing that there's enough understanding of the material. We are actually open. We do understand that people, especially students, actually some international students have not had the access to the facilities that would actually allow them to actually have a strong ceramics um, portfolio, but that they have enough that we know. And that first semester, especially getting everybody in the materials course, really catches everybody up that may be coming in with a little bit less of a ceramics background. But we just need to see that you have enough, that there's a starting point, if that makes sense.
Perfect. All right, let's see here. When reviewing ceramics portfolios, is it generally better to showcase one type of work, such as utilitarianism, sculpture, installation, etc., or is a variety of work encouraged?
That's kind of a tough one. It's a range is good. The variety is okay if, again, they all are consistent in some way, speak to each other. I mean, so like say I would gauge it more from what's the direction you think you want to take in graduate school. So you've all chosen to, or hopefully chosen to apply to graduate school. And are you applying because you want to do sculpture, or are you applying because you want to do installation? So it's okay to, maybe you have a really fantastic portfolio of wheel thrown work, but you want to do installation. Um, and if you have installation work, then show more of that. And then, it's okay to have a few of the utilitarian pieces, but have a majority of it be the direction you think you want to go. And when I say that too, is sometimes people show up and their direction, they like, well, I thought I wanted to do this, and I realized, no, I actually really want to go in this direction. So we are very okay with that direction shifting. And a lot of times it does. But if you have a pretty clear direction of why and what you really want to do in graduate school, try to let us know what that is within the portfolio. So hopefully that helps. So yeah, not like I was just saying before, not like, 20 images of just things that don't communicate, don't give a consistent voice or an idea. Then we're just gonna be like, we don't know what they want to do. So that just confuses us when we're looking at the portfolios. We really want a kind of a good direction of, okay, this I can see what this person might want to do when they're in school. So
Perfect. This question was asked a couple different ways. And this person's curious about how the program is to experimenting across different mediums. Are students in the ceramics MFA able to take advantage of courses and workshops that fall under other departments at RISD?
yes. Again, I mentioned there's a navigation of the system, but it always seems to work out well. The winter session again is that first opportunity, and then there are some courses that are much more interdisciplinary. Some courses, I will say some students get frustrated. There are certain areas that are a little harder to access, and it's just because their curriculum might be just so structured that it's really hard to get in there. One of them is apparel, but then I found out two of our grads are taking a corset class in the spring, which I think is new. We're all like, anyway, who knows? But a class on making corsets apparently. So they have access to apparel, but there's a really great class I always recommend our grads take, offered out of sculpture called Retooling, that is taught by Doug Borkman, that he very intentionally makes it an interdisciplinary class and they're working with metal, they're working, kind of with a little bit of casting and kind of more like, what do you need to do? How do you need to do structures that support the work you're doing within your studio? And that's been very influential in some of our students. If you look up Maha Mohan, who graduated last year, and she's got a lot of metal and structure, it's all from that class where she was working with Doug, and she just came in going, I never thought I would be welding in my life. And here she's welding away and doing things. So it's there. It's finding the right, what supports, what that direction is, what you think it might be. One of our students is right now struggling with um, color. And so he's taking, like in terms of trying to figure out, how he's dealing with color on his thing. So he's going to focus on taking a color course this winter session. Um, so it's there, it's finding it, and then you start to find the faculty. Glass, which is physically right above us on the campus, also has an alchemy class, and that again, the instructor reaches out and actually recruits graduate students for. So there's, if you want to get to more experimental and conceptual work, glass is very open, and there's a little bit of crossover with the glass department. So it's there. It's there. You tend to find it. And a lot of it too, I will say, is kind of organic with the graduate students meeting each other from different departments. And the grad program is very good about providing those opportunities where weekly where you can show slides, you can do different things. So, and I just saw, we just had an open house this past, actually, it was the undergraduate open house this past Friday, but a lot of graduate students came through from other departments. And I was actually talking to a lot of sculpture students, and I was kind of seeing that, like they're with our grads and their grads, and they're all like going to each other. So that's a lot of the organic part is you start to meet people in the other departments and then start to access those departments through those relationships. So,
Fantastic. Thank
but
you. And then just
yeah.
a little plug, if you're interested in learning about what some of the other programs have to offer, sign up for their open house session. Today's day
Oh,
one. We have a full week. We just had glass before you, Leslie. And all the sessions will be recorded as well, but I encourage you to attend all the sessions in person if it works for your schedule, so you can hear what other people are asking and what's new and happening in each of the departments. All right. There's a great question here, and I've queued up with a link to send to this person. Are there any libraries or examples of past MFA student work available online? Yes, we have a digital commons, which is housed through our RISD library. I'm going to drop that link for this person and then also in the chat where you can see that. We also have an online publication of the thesis show every year. And that is presented by the RISD Museum. So
that's
that is,
actually changing this year.
where
Like,
is it? Okay.
yes, it's going to shift to RISD Media.
Oh,
So the
cool.
museum's
Great.
no like we can't deal with this anymore. It's actually anyway. So, but no, it will still continue to exist, but it's actually going to be coming through RISD Media from now on. Um,
Fantastic. That's really good to know. I think that's a good shift for sure.
yeah. But yeah, I would highly recommend since 2020, like because we had to go online that year for the thesis show, which is when the museum actually originally said we'll host it online. It's the website's very good, so you can just look up grad show, 2020, 22, 23, and there'll be links for each department. So again, also you can see what everybody's doing, not just ceramics, and um, and then there might be a link to their thesis, but then all of even prior to 2020, if you go to what Jen was mentioning with through the library, the students, I don't, you may not, there'll be less online versions because, of course, until 2020, when we went digital with the thesis, now everybody has to turn in a digital thesis. This was new since 2020. But before that, we actually required the students to print a book, print their thesis as a book. And then so the library also has these physical books because one had to go to the library and be signed off by the committee. So now I actually asked all the graduate students to format their thesis still as a book. They
Mhm.
may or may not get it printed. So usually what they're doing now is they'll get the deadline, the digital version in, and then over the summer or something. I actually just saw Anna Popescu just had hers printed. So they've got that, always have that option of, okay, I have it now and I can take a little breather and sit back. Now I'm going to go send it off and get it printed. But yeah, there's plenty of resources. And the library itself is just a fantastic resource. So just talking about on-campus resources. But that is one. And the second one, hopefully everybody's familiar with, but we're right next to it is the Nature Lab. Just amazing resources. And also the museum. I'm sorry, we are just wrapped by the museum, which has an amazing ceramics exhibition, which part of it's only up through the spring, but we've got the Barkin collection just opened up fully this past weekend, maybe 2 weeks ago. That's a collection of the Mel and Hope Barkin out of Boston, and a lot of kind of familiar contemporary ceramics. They've donated about 40 plus pieces to the museum. And then I think I forgot how big the exhibition is. So they just really changed our landscape in terms of the museum and its collection. Curator Elizabeth Williams is just over the moon happy that our ceramics collection at the museum just like rose significantly. But the museum just fantastic resource, and you have access to that whenever you go. There's also a gallery in there, the Gelman, that is a student gallery, and our current Matthew Brown is one of our grad students who's in the current exhibition. Maha Mohan actually got invited back to be in the current exhibition. I haven't seen it yet. It just opened last Thursday, but there's also that opportunity that a lot of our students get to exhibit in the Gelman while they're here. And then we also have on-campus exhibits. This question does come out. We have a triennial that's actually opening up this January. That's the full department. And then the graduate students have a biennial. So that is this spring. So in 2 years. So for all, if any of you are coming in this fall, not next year, but the year after, you would have a biennial that's on campus. And that's just our ceramics graduate students.
Perfect. I was trying to find a link for it, but there's not necessarily a pretty link to direct there. Yes, we're doing a session with the Nature Lab later this week. If you want to learn more about the amazing resources that they offer through there. The museum, as you mentioned, has a number of students for a number of resources for current students. You can apply for positions within the museum as well. So that's a great way to get some exhibition experience. As Lesley mentioned, we have a number of student exhibition spaces on campus. And we have one that's dedicated for grad students in the Saul Koffler Gallery, which is in the downtown, one of our buildings downtown. If you can come to visit RISD, the RISD Museum is free to the public on Thursday nights from 5 to 8. But if you stop by the admissions office, we can give you information that will allow you for free admission into the museum anytime. So you can make a full day trip event. And then for the library, there is a dedicated section within the library that houses all the physical thesis books as well. And that's open to the public too. All right. Just diving back into the questions, Lesley, a little bit more about like faculty mentorship. How does advising work within the ceramics program? How often do students meet with faculty?
Oh, that's a good question. So the graduate students Wednesdays are our day. There's your every 4 semesters you're in a graduate studio course or critique. So it's with both groups, sometimes the seniors, and that switches between. So we have 3 full-time faculty, which are myself, Katie Schimmert, who is on sabbatical this year but will be back, and then Shoji Sataki. Full disclosure, I will be on sabbatical next year. So, and then I'll be back. And Katie, as I said, Katie comes back. So, it ranges, it's between the 3 of us. So I'm currently this semester teaching the grads, and then Shoji will take it in the spring. Yes, in the spring. This is actually my first time ever teaching it in the fall. I've always been the spring person, which is but I'm actually really enjoying it because I'm having the new grads come in and getting them acclimated. But Katie typically takes that course. So I'm assuming next year it'll be Katie and Shoji in that order. We have the other adjunct faculty that are around. We do not we don't always, but usually do a midterm review and then a final review, which we invite all the faculty to join in, plus the external person. Um, so those are kind of the structure that's there. And within that class, it's working with that one faculty member. You're typically doing group critiques, one-on-one critiques. It's just kind of a rotating, or that's the day we bring in visiting artists, and then the artists will do studio visits, things like that. And then the students reach out. So you're fully open to invite faculty to come visit your studio or other people. I've been really impressed at how the students are about inviting other faculty from other areas, or it could be even fellow students that they want to just get some feedback with. And one of our grads, second year grads, Rebecca Stevens, has actually invited Elizabeth Williams from the museum, and Elizabeth is actually going to be on her thesis committee. So that's another thing too. In your final semester, the second year, you pick a committee again, we're looking for one external person on that committee that can range on who that is. But in terms of the feedback, that's kind of it, where you can range through the faculty and um, again, we are within the department. I mean, you can see who we have right now. But again, we have Dave Allen now. We have Chin Lu, who goes by Lulu, who Jane Dillon, who's actually is full-time right now. I forgot to add Jane in there. For the next 2 years, she is a full-time faculty member. We have Seth Rainville, who's been more guiding us. We just finished firing a wood kiln this weekend. We haven't unloaded. That'll be next weekend, but that just fired off yesterday. So just facility wise, this is not in Metcalf. We have satellite space that we share with the place called the Steel Yard. So we have a wood kiln. We're rebuilding a soda kiln, and our raku kiln are there. And that was a very community-based firing that we just completed. That we worked with students from Mass Art came in from Boston, and then a group from the Steel Yard. So all three groups worked together to fire that kiln. And that took about 2.5 days for all of you who are familiar with wood kilns. It's a 24-hour process with the constant loading of wood in the kiln. But I forgot what the question was. I totally got distracted with the wood kiln. But um,
You're kind of going into the next question somebody
oh,
just asked, and you're kind of
okay.
answering it itself. What's the atmospheric firing options available at RISD, and
Perfect.
how often are those kilns fired?
Perfect. Yeah. So within Metcalf, we have four gas kilns and a bunch of electric kilns, but we have two digital blows and then two manual kilns. So just for straight up reduction. And actually we have a gas test kiln too. And then at the steel yard, we have the wood kiln, which is an onigama, which is in actually very uniquely inside of a shipping container, but it works. And then we are rebuilding the soda kiln. It might actually definitely be back up for the spring, and that will be soda fire. That's our atmosphere. We're not doing salt. And then sorry, yeah, and then there's cats too. So, so animals.
Love
He's the Zoom bomber. But,
it.
um, and then the raku. So, and then there's even a pit fire, and that's the steel yard's the place too, because it's kind of this industrial area. It's only a mile away. It's not like we're driving anywhere. You can actually walk there in 30 minutes, and then some students take the bus. Um, that's where we also can be a little experimental. We'll do little pit fires, we'll do little things. If somebody wants to try something kind of unusual and it's going to be smoky or stinky, we'll figure it out there. So there's kind of this area that's just kind of raw and open that we use. So those are our atmospheric options. And then so the wood kiln, we just got back with Seth working with us. I think that's potentially going to be once a semester. The students are loving it. We did it for the first time last spring when you fired it in a few years because they needed a little work. Great firing, great work. Had no problem doing it. So I have a feeling that's actually going to be, I thought it'd be once a year, but I think it might actually be once a semester. The soda kiln, because it's smaller, manageable, we'll be able to fire that in a day, or an overnight in a day. I'm imagining we'll be firing that 2 or 3 times a semester. We also did a workshop last year with Lisa Orr. We did a rocket kiln. If you can look her up. That's also out there, which is a weird throw together old kiln, use wood, fire it in a few hours. So again, that's kind of our experimental space. But that one, especially with the soda, once we get the rebuild, once if we have students that we feel like we've had graduate students say we want to do our own soda kiln, and so maybe two or three will go in and do their own firing. So it doesn't always have to be restricted to it's a department firing or is this the type of firing. The only thing is every once in a while we have to work around the steel yard schedule because they do their own things there. We are, sharing this space and it's mainly their space. So sometimes they have events and then also weather if we have crazy weather. But those are usually the only things that kind of restrict our timing out there. But it's a great space. Everybody loves going there. Um, so yeah, facilities.
Perfect. Yeah, the Steel Yard has a lot of collaborations, and we just did a session with TLAD, and they're doing new childcare offerings as well and courses for children too. So they're even broadening even to our youth as well.
We actually just started, which I don't know why we never thought about it. We had a student intern with them last summer. And I'm like, why have we not had interns over there?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Justice Harris did an internship. And then we have two alumni who are in TLAD now who are going to be doing some work with the steel yard. So yeah, I feel like that relationship's just getting stronger. I think it's good. But I want to continue the internships and I even had one of our undergrads ask if they could do an internship during winter session. I'm like, oh, you need to ask them. I don't know,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was like, why are we doing more of that? The standard also has some students have done this. They have a summer residency. They more than when they just graduate, they call it a micro residency. They have a full year residency, but you can go just for the summer. And Julia Ambrose, who just grad was an alumni senior, did the summer residency this past summer. So it's a nice resource that may get you outside of the RISD like, kind of little bubble.
That's great. And then if anybody's interested in learning more about other internship opportunities, we are having a session with the Career Center later this week as well. There is another question in the chat. Are clay and glaze provided?
Really good question. Glaze, yes, as long as you're using in-house materials. So we don't provide like commercial, except for ceramics and print. In certain classes, we can, within that class budget, some underglazes or things might be included. Um, Clay's a iffy area, so it just kind of depends. Some of the classes we have the budget, so if you're the way I've always kind of run it for whoever's my TA, they also have access to those class materials. So if there's a class that's, you can work alongside of, um, but if it's beyond that, then the clay, you're typically needing to get your own clay. We do have a 3D store that has just shifted to carrying standard ceramics out of Pittsburgh. So the clay has shifted to to them. So just their basic clay bodies. And they also sell dry materials. So some of the classes, like Jane Dillon always walks her beginning sophomore classes, they make their clay. So we have 3 Soldner mixers. We have a slip casting or a slip mixer, a pug mill. So if you want to mix your own clay or you have your own clay recipe, then you can get the materials from the store. And thankfully, all the materials are stored very close to the clay mixers. So if you can weigh out everything and make your own clay body. So there's a range. And then some students, this for some reason this year are, there's always a phase. Like it's funny, every group kind of has, so we went through a phase of everybody was just working with the Matt Waddell sculpture body. And so everybody was just making that clay body. This year they're liking purchased clay, and the closest supply beyond us is Portland Pottery in Braintree, which is about, a little less than an hour away. So you kind of need a car. But they sell Laguna as well as Standard Ceramics and Kentucky Mudworks. So some people came in with a clay preference. But in that case, you need to purchase your own clay. But if you're working in a class or with some of the recycle, then that.
Perfect. Thank you. And we just had another question come up. Where to see? Or did I make that up? Okay, perfect. Yes, so somebody had mentioned about these sessions. All the sessions will be recorded this week. They'll be posted to a YouTube playlist where you can see all of them in the same place. Anybody who's registered for an event will receive an email with that playlist once it's up and ready to go. I'm hoping within a day or so that playlist will be up and ready. All right, we've got about 5 minutes left. I'm just thinking about a good question to end this with. What are some of the, you touched upon this briefly, but what are some outcomes you see from students after they graduate from the MFA ceramics program?
That is a good question because that is the question, even more from undergrads. But a lot of the students, like right now, I think are this current group of grads are looking at residency programs, as well as we've got one grad who's her work she is more working in the functional, so she's really trying to look at more setting up her own studio practice and how she can start to like what kind of exhibits or events or fairs that she can start selling her work out of. She was at what did do the sale at Watershed this summer around their salad days. Um, but it's residencies. We do have some that have directly gone for the jobs, which is a tough one, I think, to come out straight out of grad school. Um, Actually, some of the people that are teaching with us now are alumni, and partially it's because they understand RISD, but they're still in the area. But Dave Allen, who has just started teaching with us, has a full studio practice and he kind of helped get that program started at the Steelyard, and then we needed somebody to teach ceramics and print, and he's very good at it. And he's like, I could do a class. So it wasn't that he was seeking to be an instructor. This is more like something he can fit within his studio practice, but he's a full-on studio artist. Chen-Lu Hu, it was an emerging artist last year in Sika. So she's sort of, in terms of career, she's actually a artist in residence at Harvard right now. And just her career is kind of taking off. So the adjunct thing is sort of supporting that, but she's really pushing the studio art in terms, and I think she's probably going to not need to teach much more but I think she also likes having her foot in the, in the space. Um, and Seth Rainville, also part-time, does, the kilns. He's starting a business with Beth Kendall to do an online gallery and do different approach to approaching ceramics. But then we do have some recent alumni who are teaching. So Justin Grubb's tenured track at Stetson. Deshaun Peoples is in Walla Walla teaching. Jake and Sussman actually is teaching at Interlochen. I get that name backwards. Interlochen. I always want to say Idlewild. So some have gone the route of the teaching route, but I think more lean towards the studio arts or kind of even oh my gosh, sorry. Like,
Perfect.
hold
No.
on. Yeah. Um, anyway, glad that's in the recording. Yeah. Um, anyway, that's Ziggy Stardust. Anybody needs to know. The animals are all for David Bowie. Um,
Nice.
anyway, so yeah, I haven't seen a few because of the proximity have gone on to New York. Nick O, who actually works with us sometimes, has set up his own studio, but got a couple different studios going in Brooklyn. So some have just gone that route of just finding the space and but either using a residency program or just getting into a studio. But the general, I think, direction is most, I think, are trying to establish their own studio practice, but with maybe some support of the adjunct.
Perfect. Well, that will do it for us,
Okay.
Leslie, today. Thank you
One
so
minute.
much for being here. If anybody has questions after this, feel free to email us at admissions@risd.edu. We'll get your question answered, and we look forward to seeing you at some of these sessions throughout the week. Yeah, that will do it. Thank you, Leslie. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see everybody else at our other sessions this week. All right. See ya.
Thanks, Jen.
Bye.